Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Today is Wednesday, May 6th, 2020. I'm Michael Agello of HockeyBuzz.com, joined by Russ Cohen of Sportsology, and we are joined once again by Peter Harling, who works for Dauber Prospects. Peter, good morning.
How you doing?
Pretty good. It's beginning to look like, I think, over the last week, we got the impression that they're going to ram through a draft in early June. The conditional picks and all these things are seeming to be hammered out. So I think we basically have to start boning up on our prospects for the 2020 draft. So Russ, you start, and we'll just keep going here for a half hour.
Okay. I'll give one to you, Peter, that didn't make my early lists because I wanted more. And then after a lot of debate, I think he'll make it, but I think he's going to be at the bottom, and that's Jacob Perreault. It's Yannick's kid, for people that don't know.
Wow.
I think a lot of the ways he's getting goals, he's not going to be able to get at the NHL level because he has a slower release than I think he's going to need to be at the NHL level. That doesn't mean it won't improve, but right now, when I look at him, like you could do like 3 Mississippi before that puck's off his stick. But a lot of times he's getting wide open shots in juniors. And so I think that's a part of the reason he's got such good numbers. And it's not to say he's not a good player. Obviously, he's good at faceoffs. Obviously, there's other things to like. But I can't get wowed by simply by his stats. To me, that's the biggest takeaway I've had with him. So I'm still having a lot of internal debate with him, and I think he'll be on my next one. He'll be somewhere in the 20s, but probably in the lower 20s. But what's your feeling?
So he is a bit of an enigma, this prospect. There's a lot of things about his game that are easy to like, and there are some red flags as well. So we start with his shot, right? So that's the most appealing attribute to his game is he's got a really good hard shot. It's a deceptive release, but to your point, it's a bit of a musket. You know, it takes him a second to load it, but once he lets it go, it's pretty deadly.
Right.
And he's got a deceptive release. I like that. He can score from really bad angles too. He scored a lot of bad angle goals, right? So he doesn't need a lot of sunshine for a target behind the goalie to fill the net. Another thing about him is he scores a lot, right? He was on pace this season for 40 goals and minus 40.
Yeah.
Playing on Sarnia, which not a great team, but not a terrible team either, right? They're not Frontenacs or Barrie this season. They were okay. He didn't even crack their top line. So he scored 40 goals, not playing with their premier players in was it Jameson Rees?
Yeah, Rees
and Josling. So, you know, he got some prime power play minutes with those guys, but on, 5-on-5 regular shift, he was second line. Another thing about him that I find kind of confusing is his skating is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that really stands out when you watch him, but at the top prospects game, at the little combine that they held, he tested as one of the best players there, one of the fastest. So, I've read some scouting reports on him, and I've seen people say the knock on him is his skating, and I've seen other people say the opposite, say that it's one of the strengths of his game. So he is a bit of a riddle, right?
Yeah, I think people probably get hung up on his skating stride. I didn't get hung up on his skating. I thought it was fine. I mean, I like the way he could score around the net in the slot, but in the slot, he's not going to have as much time as he has in juniors as he will at the next level because he – at least from what I've seen, he seems to have a fair amount of time in a lot of those goals.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got some work to do, but most prospects do. I think he's a legit first round candidate, but on the back nine.
Maybe they dug up some of the old scouting reports on his dad, because I remember, when he was drafted, I was at the draft in Buffalo when his dad was drafted, and I think it was in the third round by the Leafs, and it was always, his skating was what kept him. He had the ability. He was and he ended up being a great face-off guy.
He was the best,
right. But it was in terms of I think it was an awkward skating stride that made him slip to the third round. So I mean, if I don't know much about the player. You guys know a lot more about him, but I always have a thing for players with bloodlines, with NHL bloodlines. We have Sanderson in the draft. We have Perreault in the draft. I have a feeling, and I have another question after this, Peter, but I think teams are intrigued by players with bloodlines. What do you think?
Yes and no. I think it gives them a bit of an advantage in that they have someone who's been through it and knows what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
And they can give them some advice that, if I was a young kid trying to make the NHL and my parents never made it, that's an asset that wouldn't be available to me. So it gives them a bit of an advantage, but I don't think it's a deal breaker by any means. I mean, they have to have the talent and the drive on their own to make it. And just getting good advice from their dad who's been there, done that certainly helps, but it's not essential.
But don't you guys think that, just as a sort of a prospect outsider, it tends to be that these guys, if there are two players up against each other and one is, the son of somebody, that seems to work in his advantage, don't you think? If it's two players that are similar in style.
It can. Yeah, it definitely can.
Yeah, just simply on name recognition. The other thing about Perreault, and then I want to ask you the other question, was that he scored 30 goals going from 16 to 17 2 years ago. So, it's not just like 1 year where he jumped out this season and attracted a lot of attention. He scored 30 goals twice for Sarnia. So that's fairly impressive. Okay, Peter, like I was saying at the top, we expect the draft to be in early June. Do you think that will have sort of a effect on general managers, just as an overall question, effect on general managers in terms of they're going to be more conservative and maybe take players that they've seen more than a few times, say players in the CHL or in the USHL, rather than maybe go a little more risky and draft players that they maybe have seen once or twice in Europe, in the SHL, or in Russia or in Finland?
That's a pretty difficult question to answer. I think they've done a lot of video scouting in the last month and a half, whatever this has been. I don't know. This is totally unprecedented, really. I think they'll trust their input that they get from their scouts, and I think that's kind of normal. I don't think a lot of GMs spend as much time in the rinks as the scouts do, so they rely heavily on their amateur scouts' input. And I don't think that'll be any different in this draft. I think it might actually even be amplified a little bit because, any time that they do spend in the rinks would have been diminished. So they might have not had an opportunity to see a lot of players play. I mean, there was the World Juniors, and I think most or all of the GMs probably went over for the World Juniors. So they got a chance to see these guys there at least. But I think a lot of U18s and playoffs are where the GMs get a lot of their information, because their season's basically over when the playoffs and World Championships and U18s roll around. They have no roster moves they can make. They can't make trades or anything. So what else did they do? They scout the draft. So they were denied that. So I think they'll rely pretty heavily on their amateur scouts this year.
Yeah, no doubt. I still think they are going to go back and probably look at video from if they played in the playoffs a year ago. They're going to look at that just to kind of remind themselves what these guys are like at crunch time.
Yeah.
They didn't get to see it this year, but, you have to look at a body of work. And so I think they will look at more of a body of work. Let's talk about Noel Gunler, who he's just a terrific Swedish player. I think he's completely forgotten about at times, not by big agencies, but I think, by fans. And it's at 18 playing in the SHL is a big time deal. Like there's no way to downplay that. You're playing against men, but there's other things that I really do like about him. I mean, he's a tremendous passer, like a guy who can make tape-to-tape passes. Got a great wrist shot. He's a good skater, really good skater. I mean, his wrist shots are really hard. The one thing I noticed is he does seem to shy away from contact. I don't know if that'll change, but that's just something that I noticed. So I have him ranked pretty high. I don't think he's going to change too much. He could drop a little, but I think he's a top 15 guy. Peter, what's your feeling about him? And he's a winger.
Yeah, I think that's pretty right on everything that you said. I think he might be a little bit overlooked, especially in North America, because he plays in the SHL. So not a lot of people over here watch SHL games. And he hasn't had any real international experience as well, right? Like, didn't play in the U18s, didn't play at the Hlinka, didn't make the World Juniors. So not a lot of opportunities.
He probably would have been at the Five Nations, but they didn't get that this year. So,
right, and majority hockey fans in North America. I mean, you go to the Five Nations because you're you, but I mean, it's not a really popular tournament. And even if you do watch SHL games, the team that he's playing on, he doesn't really get a lot of ice time.
Not premier ice time, no.
No, he's the kind of player that needs top six in order to really showcase his skills, and he didn't get that in the 40-some games he played there this season. So because of that, I don't have a lot of viewings of him myself, but basically what I understand about the player is that he's a goal scorer for sure. He's got one of the best shots in the draft. I thought it was interesting that you commented more about his playmaking and passing abilities. But
I think he gets talked about as a goal scorer, but I don't think people talk about that other part, which I think is there.
Yeah. You also talked about his physicality. He's pretty big. He's 6'2", but slight. He's 174. So,
and that may be why he shies away now, and maybe he won't later.
Yeah. Put on some weight, and when he comes over to North America, he might have to change his tune a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's a first round pick for sure, through and through.
Eck, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm always kind of curious because I'm such a goalie fan. Are there goalies in this draft that are really impact guys? Like, are you looking at some guy, and what's the highest you think a guy could go in this draft? From a goalie perspective, what's the top guy? Where do you think he falls?
Askarov and everyone else. So the Russian goalie Askarov is a first round pick. He could go around in the top 10 neighborhood.
Wow.
He's pretty legit. There's a lot of people poo-pooing on him after his subpar performance at the World Juniors, but I mean, that's just a small sample of the overall performance that I've seen from him, and he's the real deal. He's a franchise goalie.
What is there a goalie in the NHL you could compare him to at all, or stylistically?
I don't know.
I've heard comparisons to Vasilevsky, but I think that's more just the fact that they're both lanky and Russian. But I mean,
I think that has a lot to do with it, really.
Yeah.
So just a quick side, like Vasilevsky obviously is.
It's hard to really give a comparison with him. He is really physical. He's fast. He didn't look good in the World Juniors, but he was really young.
Right.
I think I like his glove. I generally like the way he sets up. I like most everything about his game. So it is hard to peg what goalie. I'm not going to go there because I never try and compare anyhow.
But he has the possibility, Russ, of being the highest picked goaltender since I think Carey Price, because Price was the last top 5 goaltender selected before that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I guess
before that, Marc-Andre Fleury was a number 1 and DiPietro was a number 1, but Price was a top 5, and I think 03, 02 or 03. It was early. It was. But
I always remember about Price, guys. What do you remember about the Price selection? Was the Montreal fans?
07.
Montreal fans were so upset because they wanted the Canadians to take Gilbert Brûlé and not Carey Price.
Yeah.
It just tells you what fans know sometimes. That situation. That was. There was outcry.
To be fair though, Brûlé was a hell of a scorer.
He was French, but the whole thing was just it was just the uproar was unbelievable.
Yeah. It's that francophone thing. Peter, I looked at a number of not mock drafts, but top listings for the drafts, including Russ's on Sportsology, and the one thing I noticed for all of them is it's very scant in the top 15 past Jamie Drysdale for defensemen. And I'm wondering again in a situation, because we know how important defense is for teams in the NHL, whether that's going to create a situation where teams will try to trade up to get Drysdale, who'll probably go in the top 5, or maybe move up at the bottom of the first round to get one of the lower rated defensemen like a Sanderson or a couple other players out there. I mean, because usually when there's not a great stockpile of a certain position, I know in other drafts, like in the NFL draft, teams will move up to get those guys. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, Drysdale has separated himself from the rest of the pack right from the start of the season and didn't do anything to change that perspective. Some other players moved up and maybe closed the gap a little bit, but like Sanderson, for example, to your point. Yeah, I mean, if your organizational need is a defenseman for sure, then the guy you want to target is Drysdale. He's going to go in the top 10. So if you're not in the top 10 or you can't move up that far, then I don't know. I think there's a lot of good defense in the draft, just not of the Drysdale caliber, and some guys that you'll have to wait on, and they'll need some development time. But there are, outside the first round, there's a lot of good D coming up in this draft.
I'm of the opinion with the D in this draft that once you get past Sanderson and Drysdale, I think there are a lot of guys that do have issues. I'll say that Sanderson, some team I think could reach and put him in the top 10, even though I don't think he is that kind of player, because he finished so strong. And if they really are looking for defense, it could happen. It doesn't mean it should happen or will happen, but I think it could happen. I mean, I like Poirier. I know everybody wants to just poke holes in his game, but at the end of the day, this guy's highly skilled and really fast and does put up points, and that's the name of the game. And I still have him ranked ahead of Sanderson. Even though Sanderson's the better defender, I do kind of wonder and question how much offense we're going to really see out of Jake Sanderson. And these days, offense is the key. I mean, that's, you could say whatever you want, and you could say, well, this guy doesn't play great defense, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to look for offense first. There's very few defense first guys that go in the first round. And, Sanderson's offense was okay. It was kind of pedestrian. It was kind of pedestrian the year before. He's not an amazing offensive player, where at least Poirier you could look at and say, all right, he's definitely a top power play guy. You could see the way he handles himself, the way he skates. And Sanderson's skating is really good too. I'm just making a case that I think he's going to get this late push that could put him in that top 10. The other thing I was going to say, Mike, about Askarov is if they didn't change the way the draft is going, like the 2012 rule, right? I think based on what Kevin was saying and what I'd heard, I think the Red Wings would have taken him if they had slipped to like the 5th pick.
Right. Interesting. Wow.
I think they actually would have taken him that high.
Well, and I may be wrong, but from what I recall, for the last draft, Seider was ranked in the teens, or maybe even as low as 20, and Yzerman took him at what, 6?
Yeah, I didn't have him ranked at 20.
I know you didn't, but I mean,
yeah.
Most people did. Most people had him in the, and maybe those rankings were before he had that great performance in the World Championships.
I think it was before that. And I also felt like they didn't know him very well. A lot of there wasn't a lot to see there. That's why even some of the guys are missing from my list, because I try and have a lot of information about him, or I don't put him on. And sometimes, Samsonov as an example, I didn't put him on my list.
Right.
I heard everybody's word that he was great, but I just didn't have enough to go on. So I don't think a lot of them had enough to go on with that.
Now, a couple questions in the chat here, and again, if I don't know these players, but I'll see if Russ or Peter, if you know a lot about them. Scott C is asking Antonio Stranges from the London Knights has dropped hard. Great skills, but he has struggled. Do you think he can be a top 6 in the NHL? And he's 5'10", 170. And was ranked by McKean's 26th, by Central Scouting 56th, and had 40 points for the London Knights in 61 games last year. So size-wise, I mean, I don't know a lot about him, but size-wise, I think he's a little under what teams are looking for, unless he's got unbelievable speed.
I did see him this year. I was in London. I'd have to look at my sheet, but he didn't stand out to the point where I said, yeah, this guy's going to go first round for sure. I don't think so. And I don't think the reason he's dropping is necessarily because of him. I think his numbers are fine. I mean, I just think he didn't have enough of a jump from the year before. So I think he's going to be one of those second round guys that's still going to have to prove himself. But I thought he was a good player, and I didn't think he was a great player.
Yeah, he's got great feet, good hands, and he can really razzle and dazzle and be a highlight reel kind of player sometimes. This is purely speculation, but I wonder, I mean, he's got some consistencies and compete issues from time to time. I wonder if it's a between the ears thing.
Could be. I'm going to find my sheet. Hold on. Keep talking. It's fine.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Oh, okay. I'll keep looking, but
this is what happens when you do a live show.
No,
I did have cider at 9.
Okay.
I do really like. I mean, we'd get again talking about Eisman for a second. Eisman has shown a propensity to kind of to go his own way, and really trust his scouts. Like he really, it doesn't seem like he's reading any of the draft books. So I've noticed this. I mean, I'm not a draft guy, but you definitely. When the more you see is, the more when I watch the draft, Eisman's pick comes up, everyone's like, where is he going to go with this? Because he does have a tendency to go his own direction.
Now, Esmir asked, and we touched on and mentioned Jake Sanderson, who's the son of Jeff Sanderson, former NHLer. Russ has him ranked 16th on his top 31. He's committed to North Dakota. What's your view on him, Russ, in terms of, could he be he's asking, could he be a steal? It depends on where he gets picked. If he's picked in the 20s, he'd be a steal. If he's picked top 10, then maybe a team's taking a little bit of a risk.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a risk, but I think he is a steal. If they were to get him at 20, he won't drop to 20.
No.
Because he has kind of finish. He's too good a skater. He has aggression in his game. He plays solid defensively. He has offensive skills. So there's no way he drops to 20. But I think he's going to be, a very good defenseman. I just think you're probably talking about a 3 or a 4. I don't see him as a top pairing guy.
To elaborate on your earlier point there, Russ, about him, all the good things he said, and then you're concerned about his offensive upside.
Yeah.
The depth of D in the draft overall. You can find, it's like you don't draft a fourth liner in the first round, right? You try and find those guys that have a better upside.
Right. Unless you're the Maple Leafs and you're drafting Tyler Biggs.
Or Gauthier.
Or Freddie Gauthier. Right. Sure. Or Stuart Percy as a bottom pairing defenseman, that they did that too.
Right. These are the type of players that you can get a few rounds later. I don't know. Maybe they draft them because they feel like they're closer to the NHL. That wasn't the case with Gauthier. Mm-hmm. Percy never made it. So it's wiser to try and go for the more home run players that, you can teach defense to offensive players. But it's harder for defensive players to become elite premium offensive contributors, right? So guys like Jake Sanderson, if that's an aspect of his game that he's lacking, then you might want to look more at a guy like Poirier.
And that's what I was saying. That's the argument I was making. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree totally.
But it won't happen.
Sanderson's a great prospect. Another guy you guys want to talk about that kind of fits that description is Ryan O'Rourke from the OHL, playing with the Sioux. Great player. I mean, he's named captain in his second season in his draft eligible year as a 17-year-old. He's got good size. He plays a really hard physical game. He skates very well. Obviously, he's got great leadership abilities. He doesn't have bloodlines like Sanderson, but that's not essential. But he kind of lacks the elite offensive upside too. I mean, sure, he can carry the puck up the ice in the OHL, and he runs the power play for them, but he's not exceptionally good at either one of those things. And when you transfer him to a next level, he'll be less than average offensively.
I don't know about that. I think here's an interesting thought. So I did write about him on Sportsology. I do know he gets some power play time, but I also feel like the issue is Cole Perfetti told me, because he was a teammate of his, I asked him, I said, hey, he had good offensive numbers. He talked about his offense with me, O'Rourke, after the top prospects game. So then I asked Perfetti, and Perfetti said, listen, he was a top power play guy always growing up. And then this year he took on that role of shutdown guy. So this year, like when we were watching him in the top prospects game, he did have a shutdown role. He didn't get to show off his offense. He does believe that offense is there and there's a lot more to give. I don't think he's a 50-point guy, but I think if Ryan O'Rourke is a 35-point guy, his defense is tremendous and he's already a tough guy in the corners. And so I think highly of him, and that's why I do have him higher than most. But I also think the offense is there, and I think that's going to bear out over time depending on what role he's playing. But right now, going into his draft year, yeah, he doesn't have sexy offensive numbers. He's not gonna.
They're not bad, and they've been getting better. And I'm not saying that he's devoid of offensive upside. It's just not a part of his game that really stood out in the times that I watched him this season.
And I feel confident in this because he's basically ranked in the mid to late 20s. If the Leafs had kept their first round pick with their pipeline to the Sioux, he probably would be high on Kyle Dubas's list. Because they drafted Sandin, they signed Mac Hollowell. They love their Sioux players. So now they don't have that pick, so he's going to be long gone before they're picking the second round. But I feel confident in that.
Let's talk about.
Go ahead, Bess.
Go ahead, Russ.
I was going to say, let's talk about Dylan Holloway, who, again, has been mostly forgotten when he was, I want to say 2 years ago, they thought he could be number one, but of course he's not going to be. And then last year they thought he could be top 10, and now it doesn't seem like he can be. But again, he played on a lousy Wisconsin team. But this guy was averaging 50% on faceoffs, and actually towards the end of the year, a lot higher. He is the second youngest guy in college hockey. So you're talking about a true freshman at 18 going up against 20, 21-year-old guys, especially big, strong centermen. He is terrific defensively. He really is. I mean, he already has great defensive awareness. He's a tremendous passer, but his offense didn't really get a chance to shine in Wisconsin because the goaltending wasn't good. The defense wasn't great. They only had offensive defensemen. So I think it really did hurt his numbers and what people would see of him. But I still have him ranked higher than most because I'm still going by that guy, Peter, that was 2 years ago and beyond and before that, where he has a tremendous offensive game. It's just we didn't get to see it this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's 18 years old playing in college, to your point, and he's not playing top pairing minutes. He's behind guys like Caulfield, Turcotte, and Sean Duke, and all those guys that
and he had a better plus minus than Turcotte.
Right.
So you know.
Pretty interesting.
But he really, he needed some adjustment time to get caught up to the NCAA level hockey. And he started showing signs of that before the year ended. I mean, he had 9 points in his last 10 games or something to that effect out of the 20 points that he had all season. So he really was turning it on hard as the season wound down. So I think you'll see a big jump in production from him next season. Turcotte's going to be gone, so it'll be him and Caulfield. I think that'll be
if he's still there. There's something that tells me he may not be there next year.
He might go pro.
It wouldn't shock me if the team that gets him says, you know what, go to the AHL.
And developing with Tony Monte is not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I could just see it happening if he gets a little stronger. That may be a better move for him, but we'll see.
And we have to factor in the fact that we don't know what whether the NCAA will play this year or whether it'll be pushed forward, and the American Hockey League. We don't know. I mean, there's
a better chance that the American Hockey League will play than NCAA hockey.
Right. That's going to be a big factor for a lot of these players.
Yeah, so that's why I think he might go there. Last one, we'll do it quick. Maverick Bourque, I think, is one of these guys that is overlooked a little bit in this draft. He's a center. I love his one-timer. Love his wrist shot. He can score from long distance too, which I've seen. He moves well in traffic, and he does that fake pass that he could and take a shot pretty much at speed that really does seem to throw off goalies. What's your feeling about him, Peter?
I like him. I the stuff that I've read about him is a little bit confusing to me because everyone pigeonholes him as a playmaker. But to your point, he's got a great shot. If you watch his highlight reel, it's a lot of goals. I mean, he's good at setting up plays too. The slap pass is fantastic. but he can shoot the puck. He's not afraid to shoot. I mean, he's not Joe Thornton out there.
I mean, true great playmakers do have great shots. Like, it's the real. I mean, it's just like, I guess the difference is like where their mental head is, if they're gonna pass first or shoot first type thing.
Well, I think Mitch Marner is the exception to that rule. He's a fantastic playmaker, and he's had a terrible shot.
It shouldn't be, because obviously, what is this?
It's okay. It's
okay. Yeah.
Passing to an empty spot in the net, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So these guys who are accurate and tricky and stuff like that, they should be good scorers. I mean, they should, but sometimes mentally, I guess they don't. The last thing I wanted to ask you guys before we get out of here is, thank you so much, Peter, for doing this. This is my question here. I'm Alex Lafreniere, obviously top guy. People believe, probably top guy, whatever. Let's say he's the top guy right now.
Presumptive number one. Yeah.
Let's put him into some context for me. Like, okay, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Hershier, Dahlin, and Hughes, the last 5 guys taken first overall. Where does he fall in that group?
I think he'll make the NHL out of the draft in his rookie year, and I would be surprised if he posted less than 60 points.
So, but would you put him above? Obviously, you're not going to put him above McDavid, right?
No.
Okay. How about Matthews?
I think Vincent Lecavalier is a good comparison.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to put him ahead of Matthews.
So then you've got Hughes, Hershier. You probably would put him ahead of Hershier, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, he'd be ahead of Hershier and Hughes. I still think there's a ton to come with Jack Hughes, but I also think that team and a lot of other things played into it. Also, he's playing first line center. Lafreniere is going to be first line winger, so that's going to be easier. And like Peter said, I think he can get 55 points to 60 points. I know Hershier had 50 in his rookie year. It wouldn't shock me if Lafreniere got 70. But it all depends what team he falls with, who he plays with.
Right.
That's going to be a factor. But I would put him, after Matthews, I would put him ahead of Hughes and Hershier, though.
If he gets picked by Detroit, then he probably plays on the wing with Dylan Larkin. If that's
right, that could help him a lot.
Then he could be a 60 to 65 point guy. If he gets drafted by Ottawa, they really don't have a big point producing number one center. So,
if he gets on the line with Tkachuk, it could help him.
Yeah, if they have played Brady Tkachuk up the middle at times last year.
Right.
If they continue to do that, then that would be a different story.
I did want to mention with Strongest.
Go, let Peter go.
Oh, sorry, Peter.
I think he can drive the bus. I don't think he's the player that's dependent on wingers. Now, coming in as an 18-year-old, as a rookie in the NHL, he might be like, I don't know, Dylan Holloway about it. It might be a little bit of an adjustment period. Right. It's not going to hit the ground running. But over the course of his career, and even in the later stages of his rookie season, once he gets his comfort zone up, I think he's such a good player that he won't be dependent on his teammates.
I think in the future, right, I think he could be a future 90, 95, maybe 100-point guy. I do. But I do think he's going to have somebody on his line. What I was going to say about Strongest is in the game that I saw him in London, he didn't do much. Actually, Matvei Guskov was like the star of the show for London in that game, a Minnesota Wild draft pick. But in the top prospects game, he was on a 4th line for them. And I thought he was fast, and I thought he was fast with the puck, and his passing was good. But it must be his defensive game. And again, if they're putting him on the 4th line in that game, it sort of tells you what they're thinking about him. And so I think he has to show more. That's all.
Yeah. Could be a guy who comes to the NHL pretty quickly, because young guys who can play defense like that can make it to the league pretty quickly.
No, I'm saying he's probably not that good defensively.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, that was great, Peter. Thank you so much for talking with us today. We really appreciate it.
I got nothing but time. Thanks for having me. A lot of fun.
We'll have you again, Peter. Thank you very much.
Peter Harling. Make sure you can follow Peter on Twitter, and make sure we'll tweet out his address for everybody.
Thanks, Peter.
P. Harling on Twitter. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. It was fun, guys. Thanks for getting Peter on. And now with the draft, let's talk about that draft for a second.
Okay.
The new news that I heard, and this was just literally minutes before, so I haven't gotten a chance to follow it up too much here yet. But this goes back and forth so much right now. The news now is that the NHL may put this to a vote among their teams on June. I think the NHL wants to do it, no questions asked, right? And I think the owners want to
By
do
the
it.
NHL, you mean Gary Bettman,
Right.
Which is the NHL, because
yeah,
Bettman doesn't work unless Bettman is constantly taking feedback from all the owners. So meeting the majority of the owners, which you would think on the tops of that's a vote that the vote already is there, because Bettman wouldn't be pushing this if he didn't have the votes.
Well,
so he doesn't need the vote.
Who's the vote? Who's voting? Is it the board of governors?
That's
or
what I'm trying to find out. Because I'm thinking is if it's the owners, I think then it's done, because I think Bettman is making the call already. Because if Bettman is pushing it, that means the majority of the owners are pushing it.
But he can overrule the vote anyhow.
Yeah,
He won't though.
That vote would be about as undetermined as a Putin election.
Well, we don't know who's voting. Like if he puts it, see, there's a couple different things here. There's, Bettman, obviously, he is a lawyer through and through, and people who sometimes give him, where Bettman is best at is he is the best at coordinating people together, like getting people to agree to things, and making a case, getting Ed Snyder to agree to miss an entire year of hockey, that kind of stuff. That's where Bettman comes into play. But where he people give him too much credit is that sometimes, or too much even discredit, is that he literally is a lawyer representing people. That's what he does. He goes out there and he gets the mood. He says, "This is my recommendation, but if you owners think something else, that's what we'll do." That's literally. So see, to say he would outvote them, just if a vote is by the owners, it will be the same as Bettman anyway.
Well, I'm going to tell you, in a technical sense, the CBA outvotes them, because the CBA states the draft must be held in June.
That's true.
But the CBA also states that contracts end on June 30th, and we know that the contracts are not going to end on June 30th this year, because
but they will. But they will for personnel and
for personnel, but not for
scouts. So that's still going to hold for that,
right? But not for players, because they negotiated that separately with the PA.
And let me give you one other thing that's happening today that I think is going to be very, very significant. The biggest problem, the biggest reason to finish this season, to finish the actual season, is the local television people, because, and you guys have probably heard this, but the local television people have contracts with each of the teams. And those contracts, for some reason, especially the Fox Sports contracts. So some of the, some people are on Comcast Sportsnet, some people are on Fox Sports,
right, around
the country. The Fox Sport contracts basically say that if a season isn't completed, and this was put in there out of fear of the NHL locking down or something like that. No one thought this was because of a virus, right? But this causes, if you can't complete a season, if a season's games aren't all played for whatever reason,
right,
the following season, that network can televise that team without paying anything to them. So that's in many of the Fox Sports contracts.
Wow.
All right. So Fox Sports basically says that, so if we don't have the rest of the season, Fox Sports, like for example, Dallas, Fox Sports Vegas, I think it is. There's these wherever Fox is televising the games. Right. The contract that they have with these teams is that we'll pay you how many millions of dollars to cover the team this to as our rights to carry the team this year. But if you don't play, if you don't finish all the games, we get the next season for free.
Well, see, I mean that and the funny thing is, we'll get Russ and Jan on this. The indicators yesterday, especially what Bill Meltzer posted on his Facebook page, the letter from the Philadelphia Flyers saying that they were refunding season tickets for the rest of the year, or in terms of a credit towards next year, and indicators about the draft are pointed in the direction of they're going right to the playoffs and the regular season is done.
Right. And I think that is now from talking to people, that is definitely what they want to do. But the big issue is with these, I think there's 7 or 8 teams that are with Fox, and with those contracts, those 7 or 8 teams, and some of them are not big market teams. They're teams that need that money from the network.
Yeah,
that network has that out clause that if you don't finish the season, we get the next season for free.
Well, and in
case the NFL went on strike or there was a lockout. No.
But,
so how are you defining completing the season though? Right. So it all depends. Do you need to have games? Do you need to have games aired, or if there was still a conclusion in the Stanley Cup champion, does that qualify then as completing the season?
It's what they pay for. They pay, I don't know, I'm going to say $20 million or whatever. Yeah. They pay $20 million for the 40 some home games, or including the preseason games. And, it's a matter of of the scheduled home games that they get to broadcast those, because every game they broadcast, they can sell advertising on. So they basically have paid for X amount of home games to broadcast, and X amount of away games, or whatever amount of games it is that they're talking about.
Right.
It's not even home games, actually, because these networks cover both home and away. So you're talking about, now there is obviously.
Well, so even if they cut down the regular season to 78 games, it would be in violation of that.
In violation of those contracts.
There you go.
So that is why you're looking at the NHL in such desperation to try to get these games going, because they can then offer them. Now, here's the thing about that, right? The government could step in on these. Begins and say, listen, this is an act of God. This contract is set up for a different reason, and the government could reimburse those teams, the teams who lost the revenues for those remaining games, whatever they would have made in advertising, essentially, and say you have to honor that. You don't get that automatic year next year for free. That's kind of the story that's happening right now.
But you know what? If you do the quick math, the NHL TV deal with NBC is $200 million. You split it up between the teams, it's over $6 million a team. They don't pay close to that for their local coverage. They don't.
No.
So if they had to deal with losing that, the money that they'll get from Seattle, and again, still the TV deal, yes, it's a loss, but it's still a loss they could deal with. They can't deal with an NBC loss. That's way too much. Right. And then again, they're going to be pocketing the Seattle money. So yes, it won't be as much profit, but it'll still be okay for them.
But it doesn't matter how much they're losing, right? Like they have that, they need to get something from, they can't give away their team. They can't give it away for free next year.
Well, like you said, the government may step in and say, hey, these are extraordinary circumstances. You're going to have to negotiate another deal for next season. But I'm just saying.
Yeah. And we go ahead.
I'm just saying it's worth more the other way. Right. In case they have to do it that way. They may not have a choice about the regular season finishing up anyhow.
And we have to factor in the NHL's motivation. Bettman has already said, the rights holders are thumbs up on this when it comes to having the draft in June. We'll extrapolate from that what the talk about the schedule is. I mean, we've heard Pierre LeBrun mentioned a couple days ago that they could wait until September and October to play playoff games. Well, that's not what NBC wants. NBC's got a 3-week gap in late July and August that was the Olympics, and they probably want the NHL to play those games.
Yeah, and it's also not what the NHL is selling to NBC, because the NHL, I wrote it yesterday in my blog as like my opinion, but it was my opinion based on a lot of conversations that there is this. It's a weird thing. There is this kind of like thing that the NHL is trying to get everybody fired up about, and that is there are no major sports championships awarded in the summer, right? None. So they're thinking that we have the whole thing. We'd have the whole thing here. Like we could, if we have a trophy, if we're heading out the Stanley Cup in August, early September, but coming out at that point.
Well, here's the other factor. The Sportsnet contract, which is massive. Also increases by like $25 million a year. So again, if they had to give this away, if that's the worst case scenario, right, they're still making plenty of money off of the Sportsnet and the NBC compared to their local Fox Sports affiliate. That's really a small matter.
I mean,
it's not a small matter. Unfortunately, I mean, I know it's not.
In comparison, money wise, it
is. But these teams are really, they have money budgeted for everything they make.
I know.
Their margins are really tight.
They're really small. If they're getting $5 million from their local affiliate, which some teams are getting that for sure.
Go ahead, Jan.
I mean, to me, the key to timing, though, is, remember, we've talked about it a bunch of times. It's the other sports coming back into play, right? There's a window of opportunity to take advantage of a quote unquote captive audience, which is why part of the reason, beyond what you said, Eck, we know they want to do the draft now because they're capitalizing on when there's a fallow period in no sports. But the rumors of baseball potentially starting up in July. Then you're going to have the NFL, and right now all signs say they may start relatively close to on time. And Adam Silver hasn't ruled out for starting the NBA. So all that needs to be factored in. So the longer they wait, and my viewpoint is they kind of have no choice but to wait. But the longer this goes, you start balancing it, bridging up against every other sport.
Yes,
you're going to have a hard time getting that captive audience, and your ratings are literally maybe worse than you thought beforehand because you have all these other sports confluencing together all at the same time.
And it's not just baseball, not just basketball and football. You're talking about the Daytona 500, the Kentucky Derby, the
Derby, right?
I mean, it's going to be swamped in September and October. That's why NBC, if they have any sway, is probably saying to Bettman, get me those playoff games in July and August.
Right. They want that.
Let's just drop this fallacy that we're going to wait long enough to be able to get people in these buildings for this season. Just forget that. It's not happening in December. I understand it. If they want to wait till December to get people in the buildings, that's their prerogative, and I completely understand with that. But right now, the most important thing is get these damn games played, and that's probably going to be without fans.
It's going to be without fans.
Also,
and I think they've accepted that. I don't think the NHL is. I don't think there's a fallacy among the league, at least, that there's going to be any chance that they're going to have fans in these things for this. I really don't think they're for this season. I do think, and I wrote about it a couple of days ago, the whole concept of, of that 32 team tournament, basically 31 teams, but of a single tournament like that has gained a lot of momentum over the last few days. I think you're going to hear that in the next couple of days because
and they've been talking about if the time doesn't allow it, that the NBA would do something similar where it'd be like an NCAA tournament thing. I'm sorry, I really I understand that. I understand that the circumstances may force these leagues to do something completely unthought of, but honestly, you're almost better off not getting a Stanley Cup champion than bastardizing your playoffs and doing that.
You're not better.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You're bastardizing. Look, the NBA had it years ago. They had 40
that you're better off doing that than have. I don't get it. I mean, except for the nostalgia aspect and the weird. We are this. You're not better off not having a tournament than you are having a tournament where people can get every hockey fan excited about something.
All right, so I've done some TV.
Let Jan finish his point. Then.
You're impacting the tradition of the sport, which I get to a certain extent. You're going to have to put 9,000 asterisks. It's not a true champion. It's not the way a champion should be awarded. You basically have thrown the regular season in the garbage, despite playing 68 games in most cases already, and saying, well, we have no better option. Let's just throw everybody together in a tournament. I don't love the 24-team option, but it sure as heck is a lot better than having all 31 teams in the playoffs. Yeah,
you have a 5-game winning streak. You win the Stanley Cup.
There is a kind of but you know what? I don't think anybody's going to put an asterisk, but I did some digging, Eck. Yeah. It looks like in the early part of Anaheim's deal, they were getting around $13 million a year.
Yeah.
Kings actually get 22. But here's the thing. A lot of that money is what they charge the consumer as a fee on their cable network, right, and then also sponsorship deals and other things, right?
Right.
I just read an article. None of those stations have given money back to any of their subscribers for not showing games. So I don't think these contracts are going to hold up like you think they are, because I think that's another issue.
We're going to have to intervene and annoy them.
I have DirecTV, right? So my DirecTV pays out in a monthly bill to do it for I have basically every package, right? So the hockey and the basketball have already in essence been paid off by the time we hit the pandemic. So they haven't refunded a thing yet. There was an email that came out that in essence they've delayed and given back the baseball payments that have gone out. So I have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure the 6-month payments, because of the delayed start, the A halted and B did a refund on the account. But because hockey and basketball so far along,
but that's not for the regional network, Jen. That's for the package.
But that also impacts the overall total in terms of payments that are coming out the door, in terms of money.
But we're only talking regionally, and you're still getting charged for Fox Sports Regional if you have a certain sports package. Right. I am. Right. And we're not getting games,
Sports Center, whatever, anything like that. You're
right. And we're not getting games, and we're paying for it.
Well, I mean,
let's use the same thing.
And I told Russ this yesterday, and he thought it was funny. MLB charged my credit card in April for the Major League at bat, the radio access online.
Right.
Charged me the $20 because it's on automatic renewal. Okay, where's my friggin' baseball games? How do you charge that unless the season is starting?
I mean, here's the thing. Getting back to the concept of I don't see any way that it is better to just say forget it than get a tournament in here like that we can have some fun with. I mean, and you, if you don't want to say, this is the thing. If you, I mean, I think this is ridiculous. But if you think that this is no way to award the Stanley Cup, you were the NHL champion. You have an NHL champion tournament or whatever. You do something that maybe you don't have the Stanley Cup awarded at the end of it. If you think this is such a terrible thing, but I think at the end of the day,
I just think single elimination is terrible.
Here's another option on that, Mike, and this is kind of interesting. And I heard about this yesterday too, and I tried to get into my blog, but I ran out of time. Was the concept of what a double elimination bracket tournament is?
Round robin type of thing.
Well, no, it's not. It's not a round robin. How it works is double elimination. Everybody who loses in the first round, okay, gets put into a separate bracket, another bracket, which is which you could technically call the losers bracket or whatever, but it is the other bracket, and then you have like a basically, if every time you, I wish I knew exactly how this worked, but basically you have to lose 2 games to be eliminated from this thing. So you can't, if you lose 1 game, somehow, you still keep playing. If you
probably get relegated to the secondary division, but then
but if you keep winning in the secondary division,
you get pushed back in.
Then you could eventually play for the championship type thing, because whoever's winning in the second bracket, who hasn't lost any games over there, so whatever. That's how. And that's kind of an interesting thing, because every team would at least get 2 games that way. You can, because like I wrote the timeline on this on Monday, because like a single tournament like this could happen incredibly fast. It could be like, you're looking at like a 2-week thing. Basically, it would be over in 2 weeks. We have huge hands.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. It's more 2 weeks. Though. It'll never 3 weeks. Can't finish it in 2 weeks. A team who gets eliminated would be done in 2 weeks.
No, it could be done. I mean, did you see the
no way?
No, I'll show you right now, Russ. I'll bring it up. Okay. It's really fascinating because, and this was brought up to me by the whole by the league itself. So this is like basically. So this is imagine this is how it happens. Okay, so all right, I got it right here.
So I got one question for you though. If why wouldn't they go with a flattening of the number of games? Let's say 74. Which means you have somewhere between 4 and 6 games played per team to come up with an even number of games for everybody, and then take either 16 or 24 from there. Go 2 out of 3 maybe in the first rounder to get there, and then play 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 7.
The reason you wouldn't do that, the reason you would do what I'm saying right now, okay, is because you don't have any clue as to how this pandemic thing is playing out, and you need to get this thing done. Like you need to say what's the most interesting, exciting way we can do it quickly.
See, the thing is though, and maybe they don't factor this in. You play any regular season games, then you're bastardizing the draft lottery and the order of that you're setting up for the draft lottery, because a team that is currently out could get in. Now they've pre-disastered it that a team that's 14th or 15th can only move up to 10 rather than moving all the way up to number 1. So you can't have a team that was out of the playoffs and then in the playoffs would get the first pick. Fine, but it's still, you're allowing a team to move up significantly in the draft. I mean, I really think that right now they're set up that it's going to go right to the playoffs. And if it goes right to the playoffs, then maybe it's 20 and not 16, so those teams don't get royally screwed. But you can't play 82 games. You really can't.
No, that's why I said 74 or 76.
But that would validate those contracts.
I want to show you guys.
That's a flat number. Right, and that gets you to the point where having a even number of teams. Basically, if you're in the playoffs, you're not using percentage of points played, etc.
I'm going to try to make this as big as I can so we can see.
Yeah, we can see it.
Here's the concept. Okay, so all right. So if you were to put these teams, I've got it right here. I'm just going to share the screen again. Sorry, here we go. And so if you were to put the teams into brackets based on, now what I did with my bracket system here, okay, is I took each division winner and seeded them first in each bracket. Okay, so the 4 brackets, I seeded the division winners first, and then from there I just did basic winning percentages to play the worst, so first plays the worst type thing all the time. And so like say you have a Boston bracket, the Bruins would get the bye, the Rangers play Calgary, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Edmonton, Montreal. So this is like these are the matchups that would be in there. The fun thing is down here that Vegas would play San Jose, which is really kind of fun. That's just luck. But anyway, there's a lot of fun options in here, as you can see these different possible matchups, right? So those are the matchups. The schedule on it, okay. So this is an example. Like say Saturday, we'll take it like a Saturday thing. You got 2 games going on. If you were just, the idea was they would start this on a weekend, and if they started this on a weekend, Saturday they could have an afternoon game and an evening game. Is what they were thinking. Okay, so You have like St. Louis, Detroit, Winnipeg, Florida, Sunday. Those. So basically, this is just one side of a bracket. Okay, so this is each bracket's going simultaneously here. So you have 4 games going on Saturday afternoon, 4 games, that kind of thing. You get this thing that by Friday you've come up with one team from each bracket. So within 1 week, from Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, by playing 5 days in that week, everybody has at least a day off in between games. You end up in this situation where within 1 week's time you have a Final Four, basically, and then from the Final Four, then if you want to, then if the pandemic is going okay, and you can say we have the option at that point to say we're going to go to best of 3 or best for the Final Four, we could go best of 5 or whatever you want to have, best of 7, final, fine, if things are going well. But if not, that's the concept. It can be done incredibly fast because in 1 week. Because the first round of any of these brackets, like the first round of the NCAA tournament, has as many games as the rest of the NCAA tournament. If it,
how did you rank the teams in the brackets?
Okay, how I rank the teams in the brackets is I did one plays. One would play basically one gets a bye, right? So 2 would play 31, 3 would play 30.
Yeah, 2 would play 31. 3 would play 30.
Right. And what I did is there's actually software for this that makes
and they would eliminate down to 15, and then you'd have a round of 16, a round of 8, a round of 4.
So, right. Are you talking one and done?
So you're going with an NCAA tournament baseball
one and done.
Basically, it's NCAA baseball tournament double elimination.
So it's double elimination.
No, this is a single.
Right, but you could do it. You could do it almost double elimination also.
You could do double elimination and make the first round 2 weeks, but
you're letting the San Jose Sharks play the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah,
and they could beat them and knock them out of a tournament when they don't even deserve to be in the playoffs.
Of course, and that's
nobody's going to stand for that.
I mean, this is, and I get that. And the one,
it's so crazy. I mean, how can you say
it's so crazy to do that? That's what's crazy.
It's not crazy to do it. The Vegas Golden Knights are ranked 5th in the league, and the San Jose Sharks are ranked 25th in the league.
I mean, and I may be wrong here. I may be out on off the reservation. You cannot play a playoff situation in this league, letting teams in that don't deserve to be there.
Right now, every NHL fan deserves their team in the playoffs because
they don't.
Because of what they're freaking going through. That's how I get that. I totally get that. And who you're going to play is going to be, and if you had a bad regular season, you're playing a much tougher team.
So you're going to give the other 30 teams participation.
So basically, the NBA then should allow the New York Knicks to make the playoffs because of what happened.
Jonathan Bernier stands on his head and makes 57 saves against the St. Louis Blues.
It's a hell of a story.
And their cup runs over.
Not, it's a bastardized story. Yes, it's a fun human
story.
Hell of a story.
Don't we just need some fun, people? I mean, what the hell? You guys don't want to have any of this? You'd rather just not have it at all?
No, wait. None of us said not to have any of it. You're putting words in all of our mouths. We all said to have something, but have something.
No, but I'm saying, I know, Jan, I'm saying
the structure of the league.
This or nothing. Because of the pandemic, we only have a shortened period of time. Like, we don't know if you want to stretch this thing out to have a regular season, and then 2 months after that, we don't know where we're going to be 3 weeks from now. Nonetheless, 3 months from now. So this whole thing could be 3 months from now. This whole thing could be worse than it is now. We have to cancel the playoffs.
Your example is like you can either eat pâté de foie gras or die of starvation. You know what? I think I'd rather die of starvation.
Some people would.
Yep.
But I think if you ask most people, they'd rather eat and survive.
If you're going to do it like this, I'll just give the cup to the Boston Bruins and say, you had the most points in the regular season. There's no more season. You're the Stanley Cup champ. We'll put the asterisk and it's over. I would rather do that than give the San Jose Sharks a chance to knock off a team that was in first place and move up the ladder with 1 win. No.
That's ridiculous. I mean, I think this is just...
It's ridiculous that they can knock out a team with 1 win. That's ridiculous.
No, it's not. This is all being taken. Do I want this to be the way it's done in a normal season? Absolutely not. What you're saying, the argument you guys are all making is that this is like every other year, and we should just. Reality is that that we're either going to have something exciting to watch or not. And and at the end of the day, if we can pretty much guarantee that if you can say this is like a 2-week virus or whatever, we can get ourselves 3 weeks pretty safely. Yep. Can we get ourselves 3 months pretty safely? No.
Yeah, I'm not taking.
So basically, the demarcation point is we want something exciting to watch. Therefore, we'll upturn years of tradition and how the league is supposed to be run, so we can have 3 weeks of fun. You know what? It's like, put it this way, to use Mike's example, I could watch Survivor or watch nothing. You know what? I'm watching nothing because I can't stand Survivor. This is not a true NHL champion.
It's not a true.
Look, I understand your view. My view on this is why I said you could do double elimination or best 2 out of 3, and maybe then it gets more realistic and you modify the rounds of the playoffs accordingly to try to make it run properly. Right. Throwing all 31 teams, I'm sorry, just to me, just smacks of just. We need to figure out something, and we want to get something on the board, so we'll just throw something out there and hope it sticks.
Right. Why don't we just have 3-on-3 games with 5-minute periods, and we can have this cup wrapped up in a week?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying we're
it's just as bad.
It's not just as bad. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to get ridiculous, then the reasoning, Russ, is the whole point of this is if you're going to get these teams together anyway for a week in like an Olympic style village where you have 8 teams in that Olympic style village that's just completely shut off. You might as well, you can play full games. I mean, you can play full things. You're not talking about that. We're talking about the reality is you're talking about the circumstances that are handed to you. This is for NHL purists, like and myself included. This isn't a real tournament. I totally get what you guys are saying there. I completely 100% agree with that. But at the same time, to sit there and say that, we shouldn't do something like this that could be exciting for every NHL fan and for non-NHL fans who would really get into it. You would have that's the other thing you have to realize that the non-NHL fans who could care less about our freaking traditions would look at this and be like, wow, this is fun.
You know what? The problem is that those non-NHL, non-traditional fans who think that this is great, next year when they go back to 82 games in the traditional playoffs format will say, why aren't you playing like that? And they'll flock away like crazy. At a certain point, you're flexible. You'll bend a certain point, and then it will break.
I'm going to say it like this, Zach. I would rather have it.
Thanks, Mike.
If you're going to do it bracketed, then I would rather have a loser's bracket and a winner's bracket. So at least if the San Jose Sharks move on by beating the Detroit Red Wings, that's fine. If the Anaheim Ducks move on because they're beating the Kings, that's fine. But the Anaheim Ducks shouldn't have a shot at the best team in the league in the first round to knock them out.
Right, because we know bad teams can beat good teams on one particular night.
But none of you have any issue with this. Why aren't you guys all saying that we need like best of 3s or best of 5s in the NCAA tournament?
Because I don't even watch the NCAA
totally different tournament. The tournament has been set up that way historically to be single elimination, and also you're not every team isn't getting in. And by the way, there is a play-in game now for certain teams in order to make it into the first round. Right. But it's only one. It's like team 65 through 68.
Yeah. The NFL and then after at best of 3.
You're not picking all 250 something teams in the country to get in. That's the big difference. You're
right.
It's not an apt example and it's not an apt comparison. It's look.
I mean, it sucks though for Virginia, for the University of Virginia, who played like an undefeated season to get knocked off by Bucknell in the first round or whatever. And that does suck, just like it would suck for the Vegas Golden Knights, who had a good season, to get knocked off by the San Jose Sharks.
Right, but the problem is in some of the other, like in hockey, there are regional tournaments first. These teams aren't playing in a regional tournament.
They don't have the luxury of any of that, though.
Well, but you have to do it that way because there's an attrition.
We don't have the luxury. We have to do. If you want to be safe and get this done, this is the only way to do it.
That's the fallacy here. The fallacy is that there is no way to be safe.
There's a way. There's a way to be safe, Mike. Within like the next 3 weeks.
No, but
there's not a way to be safe within the next 3 months.
They need to play a Stanley Cup playoff structure that may be modified, but not completely out of the. I mean, you're going to have players who get infected. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
We know it's going to happen.
Of course, it's going to happen.
So, but that doesn't mean that you try to eliminate a 2-month playoff scenario to 2 weeks. If that's the case, and I understand the NHLs can't think of it this way. They want to play their games. They want to fulfill their contracts. They want to have
they want to put on the ice for people. What they want to do, they want to entertain people. Their whole purpose in life is to entertain people and grow their league. That's what they're trying to do.
Right, but I'm sorry. I just think that really they will open themselves up to so much criticism.
Oh, it would be terrible
if they do a single elimination. You don't hear the NBA talking about this. The NBA is going to play best of 7 series.
No one, because everyone is friggin' blind to what's happening around them in the world. They're sitting there, they're assuming that they still have control over the world, and they don't.
I'm going to give you a good what if here.
There's still people that talk about the 81 baseball season when they did a split season and had champions in each division, and people are still annoyed about it 40 years later because it changed baseball.
I'll give you a what if.
It changed how the structure of the league works.
I agree. I thought that sucked too, but it was not. The reason that sucks, the reason I'm pissed off at that, Jan, is not because they did it. It's because of why they had to do it. Why did they have to do the split season? Because they had the friggin' strike or whatever, and they couldn't get it together. This has nothing to do with that. This is out of their control.
I agree with you, but you have to view it as almost as if there was a strike and can treat it as if things you've done in the past, not just throw all the tradition, everything. Look, and I'm not a complete traditionalist. I understand. Look, I'm in favor of technology and making things better. I just don't think having 31 teams in a tournament to pick a winner with a single elimination is the method to go with.
I will tell you right now that if the Toronto Maple Leafs win an NCAA type tournament and win the Stanley Cup, that nobody in their right mind will give them credit for breaking the 53-year streak.
Well, that's true.
There'll be a parade.
So
There'll be a parade.
There won't be a parade because they can't. There's no social distance.
Nobody be on the streets.
Would you not be excited if the Toronto Maple Leafs are playing the friggin' St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup at the end of this tournament? Would you not? And would you not think Leaf fans would watch that in unbelievable record numbers? And when they won, they would still be happy about it. And yes, those who care what other people think, who are going to say that you didn't win, if you care what other people think,
they would watch it.
That's a problem.
They would watch
If the Detroit Red Wings won the Stanley Cup Finals by some miracle of God, you would view that as an acceptable end to the hockey season.
To answer your question, yes. They would watch it, they would celebrate for 5 minutes, and then they would say, yeah, but that's not a real Stanley Cup.
I would say, thank you guys for giving us something to friggin' do while we're worried every second of every day.
I get that. I do.
Gosh.
But the structure has to be changed. I'm sorry.
Right. See, this is the thing. I think the NHL can effectively play a strapped down playoff format that will be less than 7-game series until the Stanley Cup final, maybe best of 3 in the first round, 5 games in the second round in the conference final, something like that. They can do that. They can avoid criticism. They can say that is the reality we have to operate in because we're not going to have as much time, or that limits the ability of people to get infected. But they cannot go to single elimination. This is not the NFL. This is not. Major League Baseball has best of 7 series. So does basketball. So does hockey. You can shrink it down. It's been done in the past. You cannot do single elimination.
I just look at it this way: the Kings were the hottest team down the stretch at 8-1-1. They weren't going to make the playoffs. Now you've magically put them in the playoffs, and if they're still
Colorado in the first round,
and if they're still in that 8-1-1 team for the next 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. For one game, they could beat somebody.
They could. Every game. Every game is Game 7 in this. That's how it would be sold. This is the Game 7 tournament. Every game is a Game 7. Let's get it done. Let's play it. Let's have somebody win. This is a sport. We're playing a game. We're trying to determine a winner.
Start the playoffs July. Go ahead, Jane.
I understand being creative, right? I understand the concept of being creative, right? But in my opinion, you're bastardizing what has been the biggest. The Stanley Cup playoffs is a war of attrition, right? It is a battle of attrition. That's kind of the way what it's known.
Right now.
You have single game elimination tournaments. I'm sorry, you've changed the tenor and tone of what the Stanley Cup playoffs are. Look, and I understand the rationale for it, and I know that teams and players don't want to be sequestered for weeks and months on end, especially teams that are out of it, and you're keeping the level of interest and raising the entertainment value. I just think that it modifies the sport to the point where it's not recognizable compared to what the playoffs have been in the past.
Jen, you're right in everything you're saying. And I'm not disagreeing with anything you guys are saying, but what I am saying is that, you're doing when you're saying all that, you're saying that that's in a world that is not where we are right now. Life right now is a war of attrition.
I'm going to give you the line in Wikipedia.
Right. So yeah, I'll take the playoffs being fun and life being war of attrition.
Here's the line in Wikipedia. So far, since the lockout, the 2009 Pittsburgh Penguins are the team that has won the Stanley Cup with the fewest amount of points, 99.
Right.
And then the next line in Wikipedia is going to be, and the Los Angeles Kings, who won it with 64 points, won the Stanley Cup, asterisk, 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 and then wait for how that's going to be
worldwide pandemic is all you have to say.
Oh, wow.
That's all there is to it. There's no other asterisk. No. That's the asterisk. The asterisk is that the NHL went to a single elimination 32 team tournament during a worldwide pandemic to determine a champion.
The San Antonio Spurs won the 1999 NBA championship over the Knicks. There are still people that that talk about it was a shortened season because of the way it ended.
I don't think we have to worry about this because yesterday we heard the talk of NBA opening up training camps next Friday or Monday, Russ, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Major League Baseball may be playing in their own stadiums by July 1.
And yes, Mike, you're right. And there's reason for optimism there, but we've also read that the pandemic might be hitting harder soon, that we're in a different spot, in that, they're doing all this stuff based a little bit on like our freaking president who says we should just do it and not care what matters. And this is the reality where we are. It's like we'll see, and if you don't care, if you're willing to knock off a couple million older people, fine. But at the end of the day, that's not what the NHL is not going to do that to their fans.
That's the thing. The NHL is not going to be putting their fans to risk if they play games with nobody in the stands.
I can tell you, here's how the shirts are going to look on NHL.com. The Los Angeles Kings are the tournament NHL Stanley Cup winners for 2020. That's a lot. That's a lot to put on there.
They're the Corona champions, Russ.
Oh, that's even better.
There we go. The Corona tournament. Corona championships. We have the name.
I'm not disagreeing with you that it sucks, but to wake up out of this like world that we can act like everything is normal.
Dos seconds for everybody.
People will end up watching. People will most certainly end up watching because there's nothing else. There's nothing else on TV right now to watch.
I'll live with this tournament if at the end the Stanley Cup winners get slimed and we all say this is just like a Nickelodeon show at this point.
HockeyBuzzcast brought to you by Corona. You bring your own limes.
It would be damn exciting. I would
rather see a puppet show than see this tournament.
Topo Gigio.
I think we should end on that note.
Yeah.
Remember, without
the buzz,
Say that again, Nick?
I said, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.